Caligula's reign is one of the most infamous in Roman history, not just for its political chaos, but for how he invaded the private lives, dignity, and autonomy of Roman citizens. Ancient sources paint a picture of a ruler who saw personal boundaries, relationships, and even social order as extensions of his own authority, things to be bent, redefined, or shattered on a whim. His abuses weren't just random acts of cruelty. They were a pattern, a way to display dominance, secure obedience, and dismantle Rome's moral fabric. The records that survive show us a man for whom other people were just props in the grand theater of his imperial power. Today, we're exploring 5 major ways Caligula interfered with dignity, marriage, and family, revealing the disturbing reality of how he wielded his authority. First, let's talk about Caligula's violation of marital autonomy. His interference with marriages wasn't an occasional overreach. It was a systematic pattern that horrified ancient historians. Roman marriage, especially for the elite, was already tied to politics, but Caligula turned it into his personal playground. He didn't just arrange political matches. He actively disrupted established relationships, tearing at the most intimate foundations of Roman society. His actions show a ruler who believed he could rearrange marriages at will, ignoring the emotional, social, and legal fallout. The most notorious example involved Livia Orestilla, a woman newly married to Gaius Piso. In the middle of her wedding feast, Caligula reportedly dragged her away, declaring that she would marry him instead. This wasn't about love. It was about spectacle, a public announcement that even the sanctity of marriage meant nothing against imperial desire. After a short time, he dismissed her, humiliating both her and her former husband in front of all of Rome. The message was clear: no relationship was safe from his reach. Then there was Lolia Paulina, a woman famous for her beauty and connections. Caligula simply ordered her marriage dissolved, claiming she was a more fitting companion for an emperor. And just as quickly, he cast her aside. This pattern reveals he wasn't interested in forming bonds, but in asserting his dominance over Rome's most respected families. He dismantled the very idea of personal choice, leaving noble families in constant fear. Augustus had arranged marriages for political reasons, but he respected legal structures. Tiberius withdrew from public life but didn't meddle in private unions. Caligula, however, made private relationships into public performances and personal autonomy an illusion. Second, Caligula mastered the art of humiliating noble families by exploiting his power. His rule is filled with episodes where he targeted Rome's elite, not just with executions or exiles, but with deeply personal forms of humiliation. This was how he reshaped the power dynamic in Rome, not through policy, but through fear and shame. The emperor loved forcing noble families into compromising situations that stripped them of their dignity. He would summon senators' wives or daughters to the palace, often during banquets, leaving them there for hours. Their families knew that refusing was defiance, but complying meant exposing their household to the emperor's whims. Caligula exploited this tension to make Rome's elite feel utterly powerless. This was also a political tool. A senator worried about his family's safety was far less likely to oppose imperial policies. Publicly challenging these abuses was impossible without implicating their own households. Silence became both a shield and a wound. One of Caligula's darkest tactics was forcing people to watch as he issued commands that demeaned their loved ones, inflicting deep emotional damage while proving his total control. He would amplify this degradation with financial pressure, levying sudden fines or confiscating estates after humiliating a family. He used these combined tactics to break the autonomy of the aristocrats, ensuring no one could build an independent power base. The result was a climate of constant anxiety, where senators attended meetings with forced smiles, terrified that a simple gesture could trigger the emperor's wrath. Third, and perhaps most disturbing, are the allegations that Caligula blurred the lines within his own family. Historians debate the specifics, but all sources agree that he treated his sisters Agrippina the Younger, Drusilla, and Livilla less as relatives and more as extensions of his authority. His behavior violated the core Roman values of familial dignity and the protection of female relatives. His favoritism toward his sister Drusilla was especially notorious. He brought her to public events, involved her in state affairs, and demanded the Senate give her honors usually reserved for the emperor's wife. When Drusilla died young, Caligula declared a period of mourning that was completely unprecedented. He shut down public offices, banned laughter, and threatened death to anyone who didn't show enough grief. This reveals the unhealthy intensity of his attachment. Even if we set aside the more scandalous claims, the evidence shows Caligula exploited his sisters' positions, making them tools of his authority. They were elevated to almost divine status, not for their own merit, but because he believed their prestige enhanced his own. But this favor was fickle. He later exiled Agrippina and Livilla, accusing them of conspiracy. This pattern of elevation followed by destruction mirrors how he treated everyone. Caligula's behavior toward his family shows a man for whom boundaries, legal, emotional, or moral, meant nothing. He considered himself above the laws of kinship, capable of redefining family roles whenever he pleased. Fourth on our list is how Caligula turned the imperial palace into a site of degradation. Under his rule, the palace wasn't the dignified heart of the Roman Empire. It was a chaotic environment where boundaries dissolved and dignity evaporated. Caligula would force senators and their families to attend gatherings that had no political purpose. These events often placed high-ranking Romans in deeply uncomfortable or compromising situations. Resisting meant punishment. Complying meant shame. The palace became a stage where Caligula tested the limits of obedience. Rome's aristocracy was trapped, faced dishonor on one side or economic devastation on the other. The emperor also encouraged behavior that mocked Roman traditions. Activities considered beneath the dignity of nobles were performed openly, while Caligula watched in amusement. These dehumanizing games reduced Rome's most respected leaders to desperate entertainers. This was a stark contrast to past emperors. By degrading the palace, Caligula degraded Rome itself. The building that symbolized Roman power became a place where order collapsed under the emperor's will. Rumors about what happened inside the palace weakened respect for the emperor and fueled mockery in private. Finally, we have Caligula's public behavior and his complete disregard for Roman morality. This category reveals the broader cultural damage he inflicted. He would appear at public events and act in ways that shocked everyone, openly mocking religious ceremonies or turning solemn rituals into his own personal theatrics. He walked through sacred spaces with disrespect and demanded to be worshipped as a living god, a demand that alienated both the Senate and the public. He staged elaborate public spectacles just to showcase his dominance, like building a temporary floating bridge across the Bay of Baie just so he could ride his horse across it. For Romans used to disciplined leadership, such wasteful displays were signs of tyranny. Caligula also weaponized his public appearances to degrade people. He publicly shamed senators and forced wealthy citizens to stand beside his chariot like servants. His disregard for boundaries also extended to the economy. When the treasury ran dry from his extravagance, he revived outdated taxes and auctioned off palace furniture. Citizens felt the financial pressure, especially when he demanded fines for trivial reasons. He also took pleasure in spectacles of suffering, attending executions with enthusiasm and ordering new punishments just for his own amusement. A society that prided itself on legal justice now had an emperor who encouraged cruelty for entertainment. Caligula's public disregard for decency transformed him from a ruler into a destabilizing force. By the end, even the Praetorian Guard, sworn to protect him, saw his removal as the only way for Rome to survive. Thank you for watching. If you found this dive into history interesting, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories from the ancient world. See you next time.